Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. I am here with Laura of Day by Day at Our World, and I'm just chatting with some other fellow travelers, fellow content creators to hear about their experiences at TBEX. So, welcome, Laura.
Hi.
So,
Long
tell
time
us,
no see.
I
Whole
know
week. Not even a
exactly.
week.
So, what was this your first TBEX, first of all?
This was my second. I went to TBEX in Lafayette, Louisiana, a couple years ago. I had just moved back down to the general area, so when they announced the new dates and ran a real super sale price, trying to get people to come back after COVID, um, I figured it was worth it. It was 3 hour drive and, had a great time with that. This one had a completely different feel, but still a wonderful experience.
Yeah. So, what was your goal in going to this particular conference?
Well, I think with TBEX, it's like multifaceted. First off, it's going to a destination. Ideally, someplace I haven't been before is great. So, like Lafayette, I grew up in Southeast Louisiana, but had only stopped there for like the gas station and not really explored. So getting to go and see someplace new. And Quebec City, I had not been to the province of Quebec at all. So getting to fly into Montreal, see from their interstate, or not their highway, see, a little bit of the train and then being out in Quebec City, and all was a nice experience to get to do that. So that was for me, that's part one, getting to experience something a little bit differently. Then part two is the whole community and the opportunity to meet with different tourism boards and different creators and just really network. So those are my two primary goals. The sessions are like tertiary. They're great. It's great, but that's not the biggest draw for me.
Right, and that's why I wanted you to speak to it because I mean, well, we were roommates first of all, but as far as I know, you didn't attend a single session, which
One. I
you
went
did
to
go.
I went to one, I
Okay.
did go to one session, but then decided I really wanted to take the time. There were so many great destinations that were in the networking plaza, and with so many creators there and limited spots for marketplace, it was hard to get times for that. So I just made the decision that since we're going to get recordings of each session, there
Yeah.
wasn't any session that I felt I absolutely had to be live for, that which I feel a little bad for some of the speakers because I know, having been on the other side and you're speaking, you want to have a nice room full of engaged people for that. But just for me, it was like I really need to take time networking, and it took me a little bit more time than I thought. There were a couple of sessions I was going to try to pop into, and then would get engaged in a conversation and all of a sudden realize the session's halfway over. I'm not going to sneak in halfway during a session because I just find that a little bit rude. Because
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, that's great.
yeah, so
But
that was, I enjoyed talking with people about the sessions that they went to. I talked with some of the speakers, either before or after
oh,
the
nice.
sessions that they did. I did go to keynotes. I did go into those, but to the regular sessions, that was sort of like the third level of why I'm here, and other stuff took priority.
Yeah. So, as a content creator, because you have a blog, tell people what you have exactly so they can kind of understand. Because I know for a
Okay, so
lot of,
technically I have two blogs, but one of them is grossly neglected, I guess is a good way to put it,
okay.
because I'm not unique. There were other people there that are holding different jobs, full-time, part-time, whatever, where content creation's not their full-time job. So it's easy to not
Oh,
nourish
yeah.
extra stuff because there's just so many hours in your day. So Day by Day in a World is my primary website, family focused. Um, I have a lot of homeschool content on there from over the last, oh goodness, 17 years.
Wow.
I guess the first probably 13 years that the blog existed, I was doing a lot of product reviews
Oh,
for
nice.
homeschoolers. And then I would weave in like posts about things that we did for field trips or things that we did traveling as a family. And I've been kind of shifting a little bit. I'm not writing as much for homeschool specific. It's much more what, I guess, sort of pillars of how to streamline your family home life a bit with the goal of eventually you have time freed up to have fun. So, tackling topics like meal planning.
Oh, yeah.
Um, I'm going to eventually write a little bit more about financial planning as a family and tools for that, which I do teach at the college level. So I know
Yeah.
that material pretty well. I have a lot of food related posts on there. And then I have the travel and some entertainment, and I have the travel component. And some of it is stuff from when we lived in Alaska, which, a lot of people don't get that experience and getting to
Right.
hear what things are great to take your family to in the area if you ever get up there. I have a little bit from a trip we did to Hawaii. I have a lot of content living on hard drives and my phone that need to get written up, including a recent trip out to the Vegas area, but also a RV trip we made out to the Grand Canyon, our RV trip driving the Alcan, which is the
Oh,
Alaska
yeah.
Canada highway. Everybody calls it the Alcan. And that runs all the way Alaska down into Canada, connecting the two. And a lot of very remote feeling. You might not see anybody else on the road for a little while, depending on the time of year for that, because that's just such a unique experience. And we drove it 4 times. So,
Wow.
different seasons of the year and can write about that. And then, of course, stuff I've just done did up in Quebec, needing to take time and process and write up
I
some
know.
of those experiences too. So I'm trying to incorporate both the how can I help families find systems and whatnot, or find inspiration for systems. Because certain things, the kids want to eat
Oh,
multiple meals
yeah.
a day. Um, Parents want to eat too. There's just so many different aspects of family life that tie into it. And some of that stuff, if you can make it a little bit less drudgery,
Yeah.
or in my case, it's also, I won't say farming out. Some people would say that, but I'll say delegating responsibility so that everybody in the family has things that they're doing. So in my house, the boys by the age of 7 were doing their own laundry. I wasn't going to do it for them anymore. Um, they learned how to cook and how to bake. And
Yeah.
so at the moment, I have 3 boys at home because of summer break for one of them for college. And they each get 2 nights a week that they're responsible for dinner, which helps me. It helps my husband. It teaches them responsibility as well. And as my oldest son is probably finding out, his relatively new wife might appreciate the fact that he can cook too. It's not all
Right.
on. So that's, sort of an overarching view of what I do on the website. And of course, for things like travel on that site, I'm going to write about it with an eye to family members traveling, which Quebec province, Quebec City, both are great destinations for families.
Yeah, exactly. So for other, travel bloggers out there, when you took the time to say meet with these destinations, because there were a lot of them. There was like North Dakota, there was all kinds of regions of Canada. What is kind of your intent in talking with them? Can you speak a little bit about that? Like your goal?
Well, I think part of it is, I tried to do some homework ahead of time, at least for the ones I really, really wanted to talk with. So I had a sense of what types of things that they offer, but also looking to see what might be available for partnerships in the future. And so most, for the most part, unless I already had a sense from them, it was also asking them, what is it that they're looking for? because some locations I could go there and say, hey, I'm a family travel writer,
Right.
which is true, but I also, like I said, I have this other site where I've written things for solo travel or, girlfriend, sister travel. So adult stuff.
Right.
But if I were to go somewhere that they're just like, we want to promote high-end luxury, pamper yourself, that wouldn't be a great fit, if that's what they're looking to promote. But there were some where they're like, hey, we want to promote we have all these great trails in our area. And it's like, you know what, that's fantastic. My husband and boys love hiking. Personally, I like it to a point. My body then tells me it's done.
Right.
I have to stop. But I turn into a polka dot lady if my hives crop out from heat. But, so then it's like it gives me an idea of what's a good fit. Or we really want to feature the great food scene that we
Okay.
have in our city. And it's like, well, that's fantastic. I like to write about not only the food there's so many great options, but which things are going to be friendly for people like me that are gluten free and can't, and want to be able to enjoy. Or I'm bringing a son with me that has peanut and other nut allergies and, trying to write from the perspective of allergy friendly. So I did have a couple of conversations that were like that because those are kind of my two main pillars, the family oriented travel, but then also this more allergy friendly travel for people, which I guess you could say goes into inclusiveness or, being, I'm going to forget the word I want to use, being accessible.
Right. Right.
That's a good word
Yeah.
for that, sometimes it's something that people don't always consider.
So for new writers, are these destinations then helping pay to get you there? Are they, or is it something where you hope that they'll like pay for the entire experience? Talk a little bit about that kind of as a goal, because
Yeah, so as a goal, my goal would be that they would cover my expense. I know some people have gotten to the point where it's like covering just my expense to get there and what I'm doing isn't enough. They also want a daily fee.
okay,
And I did have one destination ask me what my fee was, and I said, honestly, right now I don't have one for a daily fee, but if you wanted to license photography or video that I did, then I would want to talk about a fee for that because that would be giving up copyright or,
yeah,
I don't want to
right.
I would have the copyright. I would be giving permission for usage, which I think most destinations understand that. But I have seen some places that'll be like, we'll offer creators a free pass to come experience our not like just an attraction, not,
Right, right.
full destination. And I won't, there's a place that's not outrageous, not very far from where I am that I'm like, oh, I haven't been there in forever. And I read their criteria, and when they said that they got rights to all of the media you created, I'm like, well, yeah, no, I'd rather just pay admission and take pictures and share about it at that point. So for me, the goal is to eventually get to where I can work with destinations that fit both for me or my family, the experiences, but also for my readership, that it's something that I feel they would really benefit from seeing. Here's what you too can go experience this location.
Right.
And here's some of the things, here's what we did, here's what I thought, here's what we thought about it. Here's what you might expect if you went and did similar things. So that's sort of my goal, getting into those opportunities. And potentially there's some destinations that if I'm already going to be traveling there and they're just willing to help me get some itinerary together and get admissions covered or whatever, then it makes a win-win.
Yeah, oh, totally. So when you're talking to these places, did you have some prepared information on you, like readership numbers or any of that type of thing that someone
So
that's
I
new?
did. I had some limited copies. I was very sparing with passing them out, and then I ended up bringing some home. I had some one sheet
Oh, okay.
kits I had put together that just had some basic numbers, showing that the vast majority of my readers and followers do live in the United States. I do have some that are overseas, and I did get asked by a few destinations, well, in the US, what areas?
Oh,
And it's like,
okay.
well, these are the states that tend to be high. And it's not based on where I currently reside because I've lived in 6 different states since I've gotten married. And yeah, I have some people from each of those locations that, friends that follow and read, but that's not the whole readership. So it's hard to judge by that. But yeah, so for everybody else, I had a QR code that I had put together that took
Oh,
them
wow.
to a 2 page, so the same one sheet, but then the second page had some photos and links out to articles I've done in the past. So they could get an idea of my writing style and the photography, some of which is a little bit older, but
No, but those
you
are
know,
great tips for people, even if they're
give them
new.
that taste without having to go and say, "Oh, okay, here's travel, and now let me scroll
Right.
through and see what I want to look at." They can still do that, but it at least highlights a few different.
Yeah, and I think the one sheet is kind of important to kind of do a snapshot of like here's who typically reads my content, here's where they live, here's all of that, and here's quote my reach. And honestly, I don't think it's always about numbers. I think it's what your angle is and who's reading it. At least that's kind of
Yeah,
what
I
I
think
understand.
to a degree, that's part of the reason I liked having the digital media kit where I could also link them out to the actual articles because I find that it's a combination. You have some people that can have this massive following, but it's not going to translate into anything for it. Or maybe they're only on social media and they're just writing little snippets, and that's great to a point, but sometimes that long form content that lives on those blogs and websites is really going to be more beneficial in the long run.
Right. And thinking about your photography, like you said, that your photography is of value. So finding out if they're going to want all of your photos and now you can't use them for content of your own, I think that's important.
Right. Well, I would be very hard pressed to do anything where I wasn't compensated greatly to turn over photos. If anything, it's more likely, here's everything I've got. And if they want to use them, not like, oh, let's reshare your post, but to actually use them in whatever um, promotion they want to do, then I would want to have some financial compensation.
Yeah, exactly. So, comparing this TBEX to the other one you went to, were there differences? I know they were some years apart, but still, do you have thoughts on that or?
Um, the Lafayette was a little bit smaller. Some people were very hesitant. Even though, we were well out of lockdown and stuff, there were still some people that were just a little bit hesitant going into larger groups.
Oh, okay.
So there definitely was a little bit more intimate feel to that one. Not that to me, this wasn't huge. I work a social media conference that has over 2,000
Oh,
attendees the
wow.
last few years. So, 400 and something still felt relatively intimate. There were people I kept bumping into, was able to have conversations, which is great. Didn't feel completely overwhelmed. It wasn't my first rodeo as far as conferences go. So getting there, even though going in, I only knew a couple of people that were going to be there. And then there were some people that I had heard of, but I got there, met people, and it was fine.
Yeah, that's great. So, what other conferences have you been to that relate to travel or for travel content creators that might be of
So
interest?
in 2019, I went to WITS, the Women in Travel Summit. They were up in Portland, Maine. And when I saw the location, and knew that I had 3 states left to hit my 50
Yes.
before turning 50, I bought a ticket and then put out in the group, hey, does anybody want to hit up, even if it's just one
Yes.
day after the conference, I'm going to run a car and I need to do something in Vermont and I need to do something in New Hampshire. And a girlfriend of mine said, I smell girls trip. And she had great contacts already and got us some stays and different things that we could go
Oh.
and do for that. So we put together, neither of us had gotten into their post tours. And so we basically she put together our own post tour
Oh,
for that,
cool.
which was a lot of fun. It was a little bit different feel from TBEX. And from what I hear, the more recent ones have a little bit different feel than that one, which was before COVID. But but still a lot of the same stuff as far as they had some different opportunities for you to get out into the community and experience some different venues or, went on a, I don't remember what the alcohol bus, that's not what they call it, but
Right, yeah.
but we had
A
we
tasting
stopped at a
buzz, a brew,
brewery,
but
a
yeah.
wine, a place that it wasn't the actual winery, it was their storefront and then a small distillery. So alcohol, 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 for an afternoon. But yeah, so I mean, some of that same stuff, like what you get to do with pre-bex tours, you could do that there, which was great. And those are the only two that are travel related that I've gone to. I've done some of what they call the mom blog type conferences. Um, Type A Parent is one that's been defunct for a few years now. And Mom 2.0, I haven't gone back to that since after COVID. And then there was an eco wellness one called
Oh,
ShiftCon that I loved, 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 but it didn't, they couldn't get the numbers
no.
back right after stuff with COVID, and they were competing the same time, like overlapping days with TBEX Lafayette. And I'm like, I'm already
Oh.
committed to go to TBEX and looking forward to it. So I couldn't do both of them. And they just haven't rebounded. So we'll see. But I know there's others out there that I've heard people talking about Travel Con, which was not on my radar at all.
Yeah, exactly. I heard about it. They had it in Tucson this spring, and
Yes.
I tried to go, but then it just didn't pan out for me to go. I don't know if they've announced a new location. I haven't really
I
checked
don't know.
into
And then
that.
there's one whose name I'm gonna forget, but it's like a food and beverage. Somebody turn lights off next to me. Food and beverage focused one, which with travel. And for me,
Oh,
that's like, wow, that is such a great combination. And I met some people. I went to Southern Travelers Explore
yes, yeah.
Spring, which was a nice regional small conference. And there were a few people there that were telling me you really need to look at these other ones because I think it'd be great fits. But there's only so much time for me to be able to take and go do. So it's coming to pick and choose. So for next year, at this point, I'll be stalking for the Southern Travelers Explore because I know that that's going to be drivable.
Oh, nice.
It
Yeah.
was like this this year, it was 8 hours away. I suppose it could be further than that, but most of the destinations they're likely to pick are still going to be what I would consider a day's drive to get to it. So I'll be looking for when their ticket sales go up for that. And then just this morning, I purchased my ticket for TBEX Richmond. Um, Another location where I've driven through, I've stopped for gas, I've probably stopped for fast food, but haven't really gotten in and explored. And with it being the 250th
I know.
anniversary of the United States, and there's so much history there, I'm really looking forward to it and have to see if my husband or any of the boys are going to end up coming
Going
because
with you?
I feel like to me that's totally drivable. It's
Oh,
a little
yeah.
bit more than a day's drive, so I'd have to stop somewhere en route, but totally, totally drivable.
Yeah, I've almost bought my ticket for Richmond also, just for the same reason. It's like with the history of the United States, and it's not a place I've spent a lot of time in, and I just think there's a lot that could be valuable there, and it just
I
looks like a
agree. And
fascinating place.
well, and I'll be honest, all of what we would call these hype videos. So all the videos that they had for the upcoming conferences, hyping them up, is like, wow, I want to go.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the fact that I think when you, like for us, we live in the United States. I know others may be listening that are global. I mean, a United States destination to me just feels like really accessible. And if I have several months to plan ahead, then I can buy my conference ticket early and figure out maybe my lodging and save up a little. But I think the nice thing about TBEX is that like the 2 days of the conference, I mean, they fed us a really like a three-course lunch both days. There were options even for like if you didn't eat meat or, so you could pick and choose, I think, at least with the meals I felt like that they served.
Right. Yeah. So no, and I agree. In your own country is going to be a lot easier. It wasn't Going to Canada was not difficult.
Right, right.
I I wouldn't expect Mexico to be more difficult either. But I think going off of North America, once you leave North America and go to Europe or go to Asia, or if they had planned one in Africa and then it
Yeah, that's
fell
right.
through, and if they ever get to where they do that, there's a much bigger commitment
Oh,
to
yeah.
make it happen.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, that's one of these days. I'll probably get to one of those. I'm just not sure when.
So on the regional conferences for people that say don't live in the southern areas, like I'm just going to pick the Southern Travelers Explore one that you mentioned, is that beneficial, you think, to travel writers that may live outside of that area? Do you think there's value there perhaps or?
There are some that I met there that were from the Midwest.
Oh,
There's the
okay.
gal who runs Southern Travelers is really good friends with the gal who runs the Midwest Travelers. And I think they both go to each other's conferences, and there's a little bit of crossover between the two, which I'm actually eyeing up whether or not I can manage to do Midwest next year. It's going to be in Illinois. So I'm looking at it going, okay, drivable, close enough that could even pop up and see my son in Wisconsin.
Oh, nice.
Um, but I'm going to have to figure out, do I want to end up spending a good chunk of June
Yeah,
going here and then going from depending how much time's in between, then turning around and going to Richmond, if that's going to end up being too much or not.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I've heard great things about that one. Well, both of them tend to pick places that they're not the big cities. They're not, because they're much smaller conference. Um, they're trying to find those hidden gem is,
yeah.
very overused word for AI now, but trying to find those places that people might not know about, but there's so many great things to do.
So at those conferences, do they have like networking there too, kind of like we have at
They
TBEX or?
did. It was a lot, well, there were less attendees. They just had, the people that came as the different tourism boards, most of them were there for the whole time. So you might have gotten a chance to meet and talk with a few of them outside of the networking time, but the networking time just like went so fast that
Yeah.
I know with that there were a couple of people that it's like, can I just get your card? Because we're looking at like 5 minutes till we're done,
Oh
and
my
they just
gosh.
want to make sure I have a way to touch base um for that. But yeah, so yeah, there's that similarity with that and with some different experiences that you get to have that they build into at their conference. Both of them, I think, run like midday on Friday afternoon, and then finish midday Sunday. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
technically 2 days, but it's over 3 days that they split it up for that with some sessions and then with some experiences woven in as well.
Oh, that does sound nice. That sounds like another good opportunity for writers as well, content
Absolutely.
creators. Yeah. So for TBEX, because I will probably share this with some of the organizers that I've met and kind of interface with, do you have tips on how they might improve the conference or, anything that you'd like to see done differently a little bit?
Um, I mean, overall, they run a pretty good show. Like I said, I help work that one social media
Yeah.
conference. It's huge, and I'm just implementing, but I know how much work,
Oh,
having done some event planning at previous jobs, I know how much work goes into all of this. And so I think for a lot of things, it's pretty well oiled. I greatly appreciate it, and this is something that I don't think was TBEX as much as maybe the facility.
oh, okay.
Um, but the first day for lunch, they brought plates out, so they clearly had marked like here's the vegan, here's the gluten free, and they'd bring you your plate out. You knew everything was fine. But the second day they had done buffet style, which is always a little bit nerve-wracking for
Yes.
especially those of us that have those allergies or sensitivities for things, because not everybody appreciates, and they would think nothing of grabbing this spoon
I
to go into this thing, and then they just made it where you can't eat.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
They had one person from the staff there that basically stood guard, and if you walked up to the allergy friendly table, it was, what is your allergy? And there were
Okay.
some people like, well, I don't have an allergy. And she's like, well, there's your line. This is
Right.
strict. It was for the vegan, things were labeled for vegans, and then there was some stuff over there that was safe for gluten free. That that was really helpful. I What they didn't do a good job of, and this is just like my personal preference, is if you're going to do a buffet and you have the names of things, like have some common ingredient, have things
Yes.
marked on there so it's not like, well, is it safe? I knew what I could go and get off of the regular buffet table where they had the hot dish because I talked to the lady who
Right.
was running the other one, and she's like, yes, you can have, this stuff and it's fine. But I've learned from experience I have to ask those questions or
Oh,
it comes
yeah.
back to haunt me in a not pleasant way.
Right. Yeah, and you're right. Just the little tips of like putting the ingredients because there are sometimes things that, like if I'm looking for something that's dairy free, if they would just list what might be in the sauce or, if it is or isn't, that makes it easier for everyone, including their staff who may not be as familiar with how the dish was prepared or what the
Yeah. So
ingredients
they
were.
didn't, having it right there where you're getting it is
Yeah.
helpful. They did have some things on the table when they had the plated lunches. And I think they did to a degree on the table the second day too, which was great. But if you came in and you automatically got in line, you wouldn't know until you sat down at a table and then could see and say, okay, that's what this is. Um, so I mean, for me, that's just like I'm hypersensitive about the food safety for that. The something that a couple of different people commented about in conversations was how we loved the privilege card that Quebec City put together. Fabulous idea. Um, it would be great if that was always the case, but it would have been nice if we had known a little bit in advance,
Oh, yeah. I
because a
totally.
few of us, it's like we just didn't have the time. Like, we weren't gonna, some people that I talked to that this is their whole thing. And, one gentleman, he was driving from a different province in Canada. So he just budgeted, I'm going to
Oh,
be up in the area for so many days. So he could look at it and go, great, well, I'll just, grab an extra night in Quebec City so I can go and do these things. But for those of us that were flying in that bought our plane tickets months in advance based on, what pre-Bex tour we had, whether or not we had a post-Bex, we didn't have a pocket of time unless we were to decide to just skip out on the conference.
right.
And, like I said, if one of my primary goals is to do as much networking as possible, then that means
Yeah.
I'm skipping out on networking opportunities to go sightseeing. So that would have been helpful to have a little bit more in advance so that it could have been like, all right, I'm going to
Yeah.
get here and this is what I'm going to want, I'm going to plan out some time to do this. But I know we didn't have something like that in Lafayette. So I have a feeling it's not very common for the destinations to do. But I did greatly appreciate, I just wish
Oh, I
I'd had.
loved it. Yeah. I just feel like too, I didn't get a chance to even use what they put together. So that's why I'm just throwing it out there now for Richmond, since they're the next North American host city, to like, it's a great idea because they had with Quebec, they had restaurants, they had like, they gave a free hop on, hop off bus, which if I'd known that like ahead of time, since I was there a day ahead of time, I could have booked that the previous week or picked a restaurant and used it. But again, I kind of felt like, oh, here it is at the last minute, and then I wasn't able to take advantage of it, unfortunately.
Yeah, so
It's too
that's
bad.
yeah, that's the big thing. I mean, there's other things that, you know, like big dream would be that, everybody would have an opportunity for a post specs if they had the time and they wanted to commit. And that I know is not in their hands. It's the
Yeah,
destination working with the neighboring areas, trying to come up with those. And they only have so much budget. And I totally get that.
yeah, I
Which is
agree.
why something like like that privilege card, but with advance warning of what you would be able to do, then that would
Oh,
enable those of us that didn't get a spot on a
right,
post to basically make our own and
right,
take an
exactly.
extra day to stay in the city.
Yeah, or plan and come a day early too, and have, all these things, on it too. The other
Absolutely.
The other thing I think too is some of the speakers are really great, and the organization has already paid to bring those speakers there, maybe set up another time, like a second session. So again, you might, if you didn't make it to the Pinterest session on day one, you could maybe attend it on day two or something. And I know that comes down to space and having room
Well, there's
availability.
space and it's also how much diversity you want. So I had for work, our statewide public relations conference that we went to, that we go to every year, it changes whoever's the president, that's who sets the agenda for the conference. And this year, the gal who was doing it decided rather than round tables for all these different topics and you pop around, and that's what had been done for the previous couple of years. They had a bunch of some speakers and then a bunch of roundtables. They did it to where there were 2 days for the conference, and they had on the first full day, morning sessions. They had a keynote and then two sessions where there were only three talks you could pick from. This was a small
Right, right.
conference. So TBEX would have been what, five or six rooms they had going.
Yeah,
So they had the rooms and they repeated the same group the second time so that you didn't have this, oh, I want to hear this and I want to hear this. I mean, TBEX has gotten around that by recording so that you
right.
can watch it later. But but I can totally appreciate that that you're being a little bit economical on your budget if you have fewer speakers that you're bringing in and they're doing multiple sessions for you. So the budget minded me can appreciate that. The gal who loves variety and diversity is like, no, have all the different things, and I will just try to find time to watch them later,
Yeah,
which
I
sometimes
know.
equates into I just don't get around to doing all the ones that I wanted to do.
Yeah,
So
that's
I can appreciate where you're going from that and where there could be some benefits for it.
that, or even now that I'm thinking, they had the room with the tables and the networking, maybe if the speaker is open to it, but I know a lot of the speakers are also there to network, so they may not want to cut into quote their networking time, but maybe just setting up, because I think somebody posted in the Facebook group like, "Hey, I'm available if you want to chat with me at a certain time about AI," or whatever their topic was. I can't remember at another time. So
Right.
maybe
So sort
having
of having a
a
a
second.
post-session area that people
Yeah.
that have more questions and all
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. That would be good too. Wow. Well, I think we covered quite a bit. So this is exciting. So hopefully, what are some of the things you're doing now to follow up after the conference? Because it feels like the conference we're just sort of bombarded and then we're exhausted and then we come back and then it sometimes is like, okay, now what do I do?
Now I have to do. So what I need to do, because like you said, you get back into your real life and get into that
Yes.
groove. And when it's not, if it was my full-time job, then it would be like, okay, I'm filling out my spreadsheet with all the contact information for the people I met. And I'm flagging like, what did we, trying to mark down what did
Yes.
we talk about. And I'll admit I didn't do as good a job of that this year because there were so many more people I wanted to talk with that trying to take that time and jot a note down didn't always happen. Um, for what we talked about or what it is they're looking for. So, then it's just making time to send those emails. Hey, it was great to meet you. And, just as a reminder, this is sort of, my platform and the things that I write about. This is why I think you guys would be a great destination to work together. But trying to keep an eye on building relationships and not just be like, hey, this would be with the exception of one entity that told me because I'm going to be in the area next month, reach out and maybe we can do something.
Nice.
But outside of that, I'm not going to be like, hey, this is who I am. I'm awesome. I'm great. And this is what I can do for you. And let's make it happen. It's going to be more of a initial reaching out, just want to, get you in my inbox and whatnot, and then following back up after that to hopefully build some relationships and see where it can take it.
Right. And then I think you were really good during the conference of posting content, but then of course it's taking some of what the experiences you had and writing about them, like you said, or posting it in where, where you're comfortable placing posting it, whether that's Instagram or Facebook or whatever platforms you're using.
Yeah, well, I just went with my super quick and easy posting on my Facebook profile, but made it public so that destination,
Yeah,
Quebec City and TBEX and all could see. I haven't, because I feel like with Instagram, yeah, I can pop into stories and drop one or two things, and I did during the conference. But for the actual post, whether I want to put together a video or I want to do images, it's so much more curated and most
right,
people go for like what's the prettiest, and so then it's like, well, I need time to pull everything into Lightroom and make some tweaks and make sure my photos look really good, or I need to go into InShot and compile something into videos and hope that Instagram or TikTok will show it to people because that I did one TikTok post conference about the post conference day
oh nice, oh good.
and it's gone much of nowhere. So,
Well,
but
you always gotta
it's
try, you gotta
it's
try.
just, TikTok is not like it's the one I'm still trying to get my brain wrapped around. But yeah, just figuring editing video for YouTube, all this different
Wow.
stuff. It takes time and trying to really think about what is it, there's always that eye for storytelling and what is it that the story that I want to be telling.
Right, exactly. So for listeners out there, whether you're a T-Bexer or you want to connect with Laura, she writes a lot about family travel, it sounds like. So reach
I'll
out.
be writing more about family travel
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I'm writing less about how to teach your kids at home, but more about travel and, and that does incorporate into our homeschooling too,
Oh,
learning by
definitely.
experience.
Oh, definitely. So tell everyone what your website is again and how to find you,
So
Laura.
it's day by day in our world. Literally, that is it. And on social media, most of my social media channels, my handle is Laura OINAK.
Oh,
Because
cool.
I
Oh,
started a lot of them when I was living in Alaska, and AK is the abbreviation for Alaska.
wonderful. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Laura. I really
All right,
appreciate taking your
thanks.
time today.
I'm happy to do it.